Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Locker Room here on Independence Live. We are live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. I am your host Graham Duthie, sitting in actually quite a sunny afternoon it's turned into now. Delighted to be joined by two top guests. Firstly, it's Robbie Collins. Robbie, how are you?
Aye, not bad, mate, yourself?
Not too bad, my man, not too bad. And also joined this afternoon, as we normally are on a Sunday, by Alistair Blair. Alistair, how are you this afternoon?
I'm about as well as could be expected for a St Johnstone fan whose team have just lost again.
Yeah, well, they should have bottom of the league, though, unlike my team. But we'll get to that very shortly. So, as I say, we are here until 5 o'clock. Get all your comments in. We've got 2 hours of fun and games, and we will probably talk about VAR. Well, actually, we're going to start with that, to be fair, because we will start, obviously, with Dundee United against Rangers, but I'm going to rely on these two because I've not seen most of the game because my laddie was playing this morning. But before we get to that, we did touch on this on Friday, but Robbie and Alistair went on the show on Friday. So we spoke kind of briefly about the new VAR review show, which I think is a good idea. But I want to get the guys' thoughts on this because they weren't with us on Friday. I want to start with yourself, Alistair. Now, I said on Friday to Michael and Mikey and Reagan that I think this new show is a good idea. It gives us transparency. You get to hear some of the audio. Willie Coleman gets a lot of stick, but I actually thought he came across very well on that new VAR show. So, Alistair, what's your thoughts on this new VAR review show? And surely it's a good thing for Scottish football that we've got this now.
Yes, it is a good thing, and Willie Collum is making a difference. And talking to some of the people I know in the refereeing fraternity at sort of senior retired level, the general feeling is that Willie Collum is actually making a very good fist of his new job, and that's going down well. I still have a massive problem with the overall concept of VAR because I still think it destroys the game. But I think what we're seeing here is the football authorities are not going to give up on this. It's not like Sweden. We're not going to get any kind of democracy on it. So by doing this, it's actually making it more acceptable to more fans. And yes, it does help answer some of the questions, but it doesn't remove some of the major issues, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, because anybody who watched Sports Scene last night will realise it wasn't anything to do with the football. It was entirely about the refereeing and the VAR. So it's not going to go away, but yes, it's a good thing. Yes, Willie Collum was making a good fist of things, and I think you'll probably find they'll try and do more of these. And we've obviously seen it behind the whistles, they're doing a really good job independently. So there's a lot more focus on referees. It doesn't take away the essential problem, which is that VAR sucks the joy out of the game. No matter whether you're getting it explained better or whether you understand it better, it still sucks the joy out of the game. And I don't think I've been on since the Saints Motherwell game when we had a 5-minute wait. And I'm not exaggerating, it was 5 minutes. Anyway, there's other instances in that game we'll come back to later on. But yeah, good idea, doing the right things, but it's still something I get shot of. And I suspect if you could poll all fans in Scotland, they'd win it.
Robbie, I think you watched the VAR review show, same as I did, and I actually thought it was very good. Get to hear some of the audio. Now, I know it wasn't all the games, it was some of them that they picked out, but it was interesting to hear some of the audio. And actually, fair play to Willie Collum, because there was at least 2 or 3 occasions they said, you know what, they got that wrong. And I like that. I quite like the transparency that we're actually getting to hear some of the audio, but Willie Collum was actually saying, you know what, that was wrong, and he's holding his hands up to it.
Yeah, I mean, Colin was very, very honest during the whole show, and I think that's, I think his fans were appreciated that. We just wanted, a bit of clarification, but, we are still getting these things wrong, and it's good to hear, Colin speak about how he's trying to improve these things and try to make it so that we're not getting them wrong so often. I think I commented on the show on Friday, one of the big things was the freeze frames, they're not trying to show referees just a still picture, you're trying to show them it in full and then slow it down, which should be happening because it's very easy to take a still image and make it out to be that bad. So I think it's a very, very good concept. The only thing I'd say that I don't like about it is the fact that it's monthly. And Graham, I think you mentioned that on the show. I'd much rather it be a weekly thing where, if you take this weekend, there's a lot of bad decisions that we can go over. So I think the only thing I'd say is I'd like it to be a weekly show, not a monthly show, but I thought it was very, very good.
Alistair, one of the things that they showed during the actual clips was there was a referee, I think it was Rangers, it might have been against St Johnstone, or is it St Johnstone of Ross County, where the referee was heard telling Tom Lawrence, don't tackle. Yeah. Now, it was actually proved that shouldn't have been, it should have been a free kick. Now, a lot of professional players have said, you know what, that's part of the game. Referees actually do that during a game. But that's one of the things that I saw highlighted on Twitter by certain fan groups, that's a disgrace that the referee was doing that. I don't know if you saw that. What did you think of
that? I did see it, and I think that it's a really interesting thing because I'm going to get my historian Zanaraki head on here because, as you know, I wrote this book about referees, may have mentioned it before, but I spoke to rugby referees, including the Jim Fleming, who's the SRU head of refereeing and is probably the most famous rugby referee in the country. And they explain the difference in football and rugby and how in rugby, because it's such a violent, potentially dangerous sport, the referees are constantly talking to the players and telling them don't do this because it obviously could have serious repercussions physically for people. And in actual fact, that's a totally different approach. In football, people talk about back in the day when referees would actually have some banter with players. And that's maybe the thing that's still missing. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to be human, whereas in the past they were. But the actual idea of a referee saying, don't tackle, I kind of get that. My concern is that it makes it more like rugby, and referees are then actually affecting the game. Because 9 times out of 10, he's going to be right. 9 times out of 100, another occasion, the guy's going to make a tackle and actually it will be all right. So it's a very difficult one. I can understand why people criticise it. I can understand why people praise it. But I do think it's interesting to see these things. And you talked about the monthly show. My understanding is, and I'll have to go and check this, but I looked at this sometime a few months ago in Spain, I believe. There's a sort of moratorium after the games, but there's actually every weekend they go over all the VAR stuff. It's worthwhile Googling it, because if they do that, and I think the authorities come back, because there was a huge fuss about some game, probably a Real Madrid game or something, where actually they didn't have the transcripts, they didn't have the audio. And again, of course, everyone's saying, yeah, it's just Real Madrid getting away with it because they're Real Madrid. But Spain seems to have a slightly better idea of how to do it on a regular basis so people can pick up after the game, okay, that's why he did that. That makes sense.
Rob, one of the most contentious things still, and we'll talk about that during the show, because there's a few things that we'll get to, but one of the most contentious things is still the handball. Now, they explained the one against Connor Barron for Hearts' first game of the season. Now, I have no issue with that not being a handball because, his arm's not in an unnatural position. I've got no issue with that. The issue that I think a lot of folk have got, and I said this on Friday, is the consistency. If that's not going to get given every week, then fine. But my worry is that won't get given 1 week, but the same thing will get given the next week. Now, Willie Collum did try to explain what they're trying to do with these handballs, but it is still one of the most contentious things in football just now. Nobody seems to know what the handball rule is.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weird one. I think, Collins try to explain it the best that he can because it is a hard rule to understand, it's such an opinionated thing, a handball, that you're going to get out of 10 referees, 9 will probably give it one way, but you always got one that's going to give it the other way. So, I think if you're Column, rightly so explained on the show, we're trying to draw into the referee's head a clear indication on what is a handball and what's not. And I think, there was some over the weekend, I think we'll speak about it in the Celtic Hearts game as well, where, it does become that factor, how close is it to the person, when the ball has struck his hand. So it's always a very weird rule, but I think Column's doing a good thing. He came out and said again, he's trying to indicate these referees, what is the handball and what's not. So I think Column's doing the best he can, but this is, is such an opinionated thing that a lot of referees will have a different opinion. And that's how, 1 week you might get a handball for it and 1 week you might not. So it's always a weird sort of thing.
Alistair, I think the handball thing just needs to go back to basics. Deliberate or not deliberate. Now, I'm not saying, no person is trying to deliberately handle the ball, but there are some instances you go, yeah, that's definitely deliberate. It just needs to get redefined as deliberate or not deliberate.
Yeah, the fault lies not with the Scottish referees or Willie Collum or the English referees or anybody else. It lies squarely with IFAB. Now, bear in mind that the SFA is one of the sort of 4 permanent members of IFAB, so we should have some clout on this, you would hope. But it's IFAB that make the laws, and obviously FIFA are involved in that, but it is IFAB. So if you look back over the last couple of years, you can see they changed the handball law. If you actually look at it, they score bits out because it didn't work the previous season and they're trying to get it right the next time. And it makes it more and more complicated. And of course, the The referees, as Robbie's just said, can't keep up. The players have got no chance. The pundits, none of whom could referee a game to save their lives at the top level, they get coached by a bona fide referee before the shows go out on the telly. I know, because I know one of the referees that did it. Some of the pundits don't pay any attention to referees because they think they're right. I'm not mentioning any names, but Michael Stewart might come to mind, for example. So I think the problem is essentially the one that we all know is that it's this lack of consistency. It'll be given one day. They're trying to make it less contentious than it was. If you went back to what we all know when we were younger, is it deliberate or not? It's still subjective. But at least you can accept that. At least you can go, okay, right, referee got it wrong. In the same way that Willie Collum said there were mistakes made before. Well, if there were mistakes made before, they almost certainly affected the outcome of the game. And that's been the case throughout the whole of football history. You either turn it into a computer game, or you actually accept that we're going to have errors and you just suck them up and get on with it. And actually, you enjoy it and you go to the pub and you moan about it, etc., etc. All those kind of things. I'm very much in that camp. Let's go back to, is it ball to hand or hand to ball? If somebody punches the ball off the goal line, it's a penalty. You get sent off. No question. If somebody fires the ball across, and we saw this at the weekend, and it looks like the player's desperately trying to get his hands out of the way, and the column saying, and the IFAB are trying to say that you don't have to put your hands behind your back now, but players are still trying to do it. It's the most unnatural thing out. We've talked about this loads of times. They need to listen to the customer, the fans, who are saying, absolutely, we've got to get this right, because just now it's a joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, Robbie, because you are now looking at players and thinking, at the point they're going to have to get their hands with a rope behind their back to stop them moving. You can't physically move without moving your arms. It's impossible to do it. You know, we saw penalties given last season, and to be fair, Willie Collum actually did say that first game of the season against Rangers, that would have got given last season, but it's not going to get given this season. But like I've said, I'm fine with that if it's consistent across the board. But you cannot physically jump without your hands not moving. It's impossible.
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible, and you've got to think the players are probably starting to get quite confused with this rule as well, because at the end of the day, I know Alistair, you said about listening to the fans, but I'm sure the players behind the scenes are looking for some clarification as well, because they're going out one week and a player could put his hand in the exact same position one week and the next week, and then it's given one week but not given in it. So I think the players as well need clear clarification, because it's at the end of the day, as then it's playing the game, and they need to know, where can I put my hands. But it is a very tough situation, because there's only a certain amount of places a player can put a hand, without looking silly. So I think the players and the fans both need clarification on this.
We've got Sandy, a Dundee United fan. Don Robertson is an absolute disgrace to Scottish referee, and it's not taking long to come on about referee. It's good, but you can't change a decision already made, which is fair. Good afternoon to Liverpool as well. I mean, I honestly think you've actually got a really good point as well, Alistair, about the fact about VAR. Now, I've said before, I don't think VAR is a problem, but I get why folk don't like it. It does ruin the enjoyment of the game. When VAR initially came in, I think a lot of folk thought when you go to the pub or talk with your mates, there'll be nothing to talk about now because VAR's going to sort it, but it's clearly not. There's still a lot of contentious decisions. Even yesterday, the Celtic Hearts game, I'm in a couple of group chats, and most of my group chat yesterday went mental about the two penalty decisions, which I get, but again, they are both very contentious. Celtic fans will argue it's not a penalty. Hearts fans will argue it is a penalty. You're not going to get everybody agreeing with it. So it is very contentious just now.
It absolutely is. And I think that this thing about unnatural positions, and again, I can't remember I've got it in front of me, but the last time I looked at the laws on this, it talks about the sort of position of the arm's body in relation to the actual what's happening at the time. So I remember a couple of years back when VAR first came in, we were playing Dundee United at Tannadice, and Liam Craig slid in to try and block a shot. Now, you cannot slide in to try and block a shot with your arms behind your back. It is physically impossible. Unsurprisingly, he's got an arm up in the air for balance, because that is the natural movement for that thing. The ball smashes into his arm from a couple of yards away, and it's a penalty. That, to my mind, is just simply wrong. He is not trying to gain an advantage. Now, if he'd done that on the goal line, I can understand. But again, this is where you get into the sort of referees should referee the game that's in front of them. They don't get to do that now. The games are being re-refereed, and again, you can actually hear that in the show that the SFA are putting out. Referees are saying, "Take a look at this." The VAR saying, "Take a look at this." So it's not going to change unless there is a complete sea change in the law, so that we know what it is and we accept it. Let me throw in another little curveball for you here. The biggest problem in VAR, or let me rephrase that. One of the biggest problems is the media. The media love VAR. They will give it up over their dead body. If you listen to the BBC on Saturday on the radio, which I don't now because I find it unlistenable, they absolutely are making the most of it. And that carries on through the evening programme. It gives them something to talk about. If it was taken away, they wouldn't have it. They'd probably still go on about the decisions as they did before, but it gives them an existence, which, a reason for existence, which quite frankly, I don't think matters. This is not a game for the media. This is a game for the people who are watching this show, for the guys sitting around doing this show who go week in, week out to see their team and want to enjoy a game of football, not to have their enjoyment, as I've said many times, sucked out of a 5-minute wait for a VAR decision.
Yeah, I remember not that long ago, it used to be trial by sports team. That was what it was called. You would get every decision would be trialed by the sports team. It still is. But actually, let's talk about some football. Good afternoon to Ross on YouTube. Now, let's talk about some football. Let's talk about the game that was played at lunchtime today. Now, again, I'm relying on Robin Alistair here because I have seen very little of this game because my laddie are football, so I've barely really seen a lot of the game. But it was finished on United 0, Rangers 1. Tom Lawrence's goal in the 7th minute. United, I did see the last kind of 20 minutes. United were piling on pressure, but didn't really create a lot. So, Robbie, what was your thoughts on the game? Because I generally haven't seen most of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the whole game, Rangers get the job done at the end of the day. It wasn't a good watch, or it wasn't easy for Rangers, but they got the 3 points, and I think you've got to give credit to Rangers because if you look at that goal, I mean, Vanessa's, he gets quite a lot of criticism in the game, but his hold-up play there and just a wee knock on to Tom Lawrence was absolutely fantastic. And then you've got to give credit to Tom Lawrence as well because the run's good and the finish is even better. So I think in terms of the goal was very good. Full credit goes to Dessers and Lawrence for that. But I thought, the first half, Rangers, as you'd expect, sort of dominated. They were just passing the ball around, trying to create chances. And then the second half came, and I thought Dundee United looked really, really good for large parts of the game. They were piling on the pressure, trying to get that equaliser. They weren't scared sitting back, which you find a lot of the teams do against Rangers and Celtic. But I think Dundee United's biggest problem was their set pieces because there was a lot of corners that were coming into the box and just drifting straight out for the goal kick and stuff. And I think if Dundee United maybe done better than they set pieces, the game could have turned it different. But overall, I thought Rangers just get the job done, what they had to do, because after the Old Firm the other week before the international break, a lot of pressure's on Clement, and it still is. Every game's a must-win now. So I think for Clement to go out there and get the job done, it was good for him and his Rangers team. But as well, I think Jim Goodwin will be disappointed because I think Dundee United have had a really good start of the season. But I think he'll just need to pick his players up and keep going because, again, they are having such a good start. And I think they've got a big cup game next week as well. So a good start of the season for Dundee United, but Rangers just get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big win for Rangers because going out of this game, they were 8 points behind Celtic, even this early in the season. It didn't really matter how they won today. It was just a case of winning the game. They're now 5 points behind, but it was a big, big win for them today at a very tough venue.
Yeah, I actually thought before the game that this was a game that Dundee United could win. Depending on how Rangers approached it now. I'll be honest, I'm dependent on Robbie as well because I was in Tesco for the first 10 minutes and then coming back to the for the next 10 minutes with it on the radio. So I saw the rest of it, and at the risk of shortening this particular show by about half an hour, I would entirely agree with Robbie's analysis. The one or two things that add to it were United, when they went forward, they tried to attack. And I was surprised when I saw the stats at the end of the game. I don't know about you, Robbie, but they didn't have a shot on goal. I didn't get that feeling from the game. It wasn't that kind of game where you thought, what, no shots on goal? Surely they must have. But thinking about it again, they didn't. They had some shots passed. They had, as you say, too many long-range corners. But they attacked Rangers with a degree of fluency. That would be mad. And if I was a United fan, I would be, yeah, okay, fair enough. It's Rangers. They got the goal. They were clearly, from all the reports that I heard on the radio and again at halftime, the stuff that's on the first half, they were a better team. Again, I was slightly surprised by the stats in terms of possession. Rangers had more possession than I felt they had, though maybe that was the 20 minutes I was in Tesco. I don't know. What was your take on it, Robbie, in terms of United's ability to attack but not actually threaten?
Yeah, I mean, like, you're 100% correct. Dundee United, they picked their spots to attack very well at times, but it just sort of felt you got to the final third and they just didn't really know what to do with it. I don't know if that was just because I don't know. I don't know if the Rangers defence, I thought the Rangers defence looked solid today, but Dundee United, if they just had, I don't know, if they had another striker up there, maybe that could get that pop shot off, maybe the game could have turned it different. It just felt like they got up to the final third and they just panicked a wee bit. But I mean, in terms of the stats, I think the game felt very open compared to what the stats were. It looked a lot like the classic Rangers domination in the game. But if you actually watch the game, it felt much different to that. So I think Dundee United and Jim Goodwin especially will be a bit more frustrated they couldn't create more chances. But I just felt like they would get a bit nerfed in the final third.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, that's very much my take on it. The stats, there's damn lies in statistics. Watching particularly the second half, United are actually taking the game to Rangers. They're having a go. They're not trying to sit back in the break. And what I found was really, really refreshing was that when they had the ball in the final third, they were actually trying to take their man on quite often than not, rather than recycling it back to the halfway line, which is what everybody else does. Well, not everybody else, but a lot of other teams do. And it made the game, as you say, more open, more enjoyable to watch. And you had the feeling if they'd got a break, and there was a couple of times the ball broke across the Rangers goal or broke back from a defender, or if it had just come to a United player, who knows? Then again, Rangers could have scored a second if it wasn't for a great save from the United keeper. So I think Rangers deserve to win, but if I was a United fan, I would be reasonably happy about it in the sense that I don't think they're going to have any problems at all this season to keep on playing the way they're playing.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think another thing I noticed as well was, the Rangers midfield is always quite open when Dundee United were breaking. I found, I don't know if that's Rangers maybe committing too many men forward, but it felt like every time Dundee United ran forward, it was their attack versus Rangers back line. It didn't feel like Rangers sort of had that defensive midfielder in there. It felt like every time Dundee United were breaking forward, the whole midfield and attack was still at the pitch. So I don't know if that's maybe something to work on for Rangers, because another team on another day will maybe capitalise on that and get a few goals, and then Rangers will find themselves in trouble. But that's another thing I noted with how open Rangers midfield was.
Yeah, I think the other thing, sorry, Graham, just going back to the VAR thing, the referees. There was an incident in the second half when United were breaking out of defence, just out of their penalty box, but wide on their left, and it looked as if the United player was pulled back, and the fans in the stand were going nuts. Rangers then broke, and then the ball. Well, it wasn't a goal, but it broke across. And Rangers then had possession of the ball for the next couple of minutes. And this is another problem I've got with the whole concept of VAR, is that if they'd scored from that, it wouldn't have counted, because they might have gone back and found there was a foul, if that was the case. On the other hand, if they'd scored from a second phase possession, it would have counted, but they'd have had the advantage through possibly a refereeing error on the far side. And we had this in our game against Motherwell a few weeks ago, because Motherwell's winner came in the 93rd minute or whatever it was, when there's a ball lofted forward. Ross Sinclair, the goalkeeper, goes up, looks like he touches it over the bar. The referee gives the corner, he protests, he didn't touch it. Motherwell score off the corner. The replay show he didn't touch it. It doesn't count because it's the phase before the goal. But that's manifestly, in my view, wrong. So you either accept it, which I will do, and get rid of VAR, or you actually say, look, you know what, you've got to go back to the previous one, and that won't happen. And that is part of the problem we've got with VAR. Anyway, I'll shut up about VAR for the next 5 minutes. We can go into talking about Rangers. It was just, I think Sandy made his point about the referee being an absolute disgrace to Scottish refereeing. I don't know whether that was the only incident he was talking about, but it did seem to me there that was something which could have changed the game.
Well, because I knew it was hosting and because I was out at my laddie's game, I was searching for highlights, and there actually was a VAR incident I did see. for a foul by Adebayo on Conor Barron, which was eventually given as a yellow card. Was that the right decision for you, Robbie? Yellow card given there?
I think so, but to be honest, I don't know. It's always weird ones, but I think I'd say it was a yellow card for me.
Alistair, would you agree with that? Because I've only saw it once, and it did look a little bit late, but I don't think it's that dangerous. Or yellow card probably was the right decision for that.
Well, Chris Boyd said it was a definite red card. So that tells you that it was probably a yellow. And I think, do you know what? You always think if it was your team, what would you think? Or it was against your team, one or the other. I don't actually like players getting sent off unless they need to be sent off. I think that's another thing we need to bear in mind, is that unless somebody really has gone out to cripple somebody, then by and large you want to try and keep 11 players on the park. So yes, it was a bad foul. Was it a red card? No, I don't think it was. And I think it was either for or against my team. I'd have gone along with that. So I think, I'm afraid, Chris Boyd, not for the first time in his life, was wrong.
Doesn't surprise me. But I mean, based on what I did see, Robbie, second half especially anyway, it looked like United had a decent lot of possession, but just that final ball was just lacking at times.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for the whole of the second half, to be honest, it felt like, you were watching a Celtic team versus a Dundee United. Like, in terms of Dundee United, seemed like they were the Celtic or Rangers in the game. It just felt like Rangers were the team trying to hit in the break in the second half, which, it's weird to see. You don't normally see that for a team, what won a Celtic or Rangers. So it felt like Dundee United, Jim Goodwin probably would have just said to them, look, go and attack them, get in their faces, because I've said it multiple times. I know the old firm teams don't like it when you get in their faces. They don't like it when you get rough with them. And that's what happens when you actually take a go at one of the old firms. Like, you take a go at Rangers and you can get something from the game. Unfortunately, Dundee United didn't today, but they looked very, very good the second half. So I think there's a lot of positives that Goodwin can take.
I mean, talking of positives, I suppose, for Rangers, I think Tom Lawrence did take his goal very well. But I'm still not convinced by them yet, Alistair. I know it's early in the season. I know that they got the win today. It's a big, big win. But I'm still not really convinced by the way they're playing. I just don't think there's something not quite clicking there just now. I think Conor Barron is a decent signing for them. I think he's done well so far. But again, they're just not quite... They're not anywhere near Celtic's level for me. They're by far miles off that.
You're spot on. Always, Conor Barron is a good player. When they played us, he came in the second half and actually, I wouldn't say turned the game, but he made a significant difference in Rangers getting control of midfield. I've said this on this show before. I think the problem for Rangers and their fans is that they know that they're not going to win the league this year, barring some kind of divine intervention. And that must, bear in mind the sort of, let's not talk about the bush, the animosity between Rangers and Celtic fans. That's really hard for you to take, because you're actually looking at being, okay, they've caught up a bit of ground today, but everyone's expecting Celtic to be about 10, 15 points ahead at the end of the season easily. People are now talking about Celtic going to the, without actually conceding any goals. Now, that's not going to happen, but they might go through the whole season unbeaten. So, although Rangers, yes, they are not quite what they could be, I don't think they're ever going to get anywhere near Celtic just now. Their financial gap between them and Celtic is actually substantial, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, I actually think it's embarrassing how far Celtic are ahead of everybody else, and it's actually making Scottish football not good to watch, unless you're a Celtic fan, in which case you're obviously happy. But you're going into your games against Celtic and Rangers. I mean, as a Hearts fan, Graham, you're looking at the game of the weekend thinking, we'll be lucky to get anything here, I'm sure. We're playing Celtic in a few weeks' time, and I'll be happy if we keep it down to 6. That's the kind of mentality you're going into. What the players must think, despite what they actually say, oh yeah, we've got a game plan. The moment you lose the first goal, you can see the heads going down, because people are human. And I just don't think this is good for Scottish football. I'm not saying that what is good for Scottish football is Rangers and Celtic dominating, because that's what we've had forever. And I'm old enough to remember Aberdeen and Dundee United. Brilliant. Fabulous to have that. It would be great to have that again. It's not going to happen. But just now, Scottish football is not good, and Celtic are far too far ahead. And if I was a Rangers fan, I would be pretty despondent.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy in the chat says they had to take it to a corner. They had to take it to the corner against the newly promoted team, which they did. I did see that. And actually, I did see a couple of things on Twitter after the game as well. Do you know, I just don't think Rangers are anywhere near good enough at the moment. And I don't think they will win the league. And I'll be honest, I said on Friday when we went to Celtic Park, I was worried we were going to get hammered there. I was actually glad to keep it down to 2-0, to be honest. But yeah, it's a fair point, I think, Robbie, there that Alistair makes. Celtic are just miles and miles ahead. They can afford to lose Matt O'Reilly for, 30 million? And it's just, the gap is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. They've got the Champions League money. Celtic are just going to keep on flying. And it's true. It's not great for Scottish football. I mean, I've followed Hearts since about 1987. So I've never seen Hearts win the league. And I don't think I ever will. And it's just getting... The only team right now that looks like they could get anywhere near them is Aberdeen. But nobody else seems to be anywhere close to getting anywhere near them.
Yeah, and I think when Aberdeen go to play Rangers or Celtic, it'll probably end in defeat for them. I mean, maybe not Rangers. I think Aberdeen can actually give Rangers a good game, depending on where the game's being played. But Alistair's completely right. No one's going to touch Celtic for years, in my opinion. They are just too strong. I mean, even the bench is worth millions and millions of pounds, which, you know, their bench is worth more than basically the whole way the league bar Rangers. So it just shows you how good they are. You know, Celtic can go out and deadline day and spend a couple £1 million on a player for here, there, and everywhere. But you know, it's a struggle for the other teams, and it sort of ruins the entertainment of Scottish football. And I think that's why a lot of people, more specifically, you know, down in England and stuff, look into the league and go, you know, it's just a Rangers and Celtic league, or you know, some people mention the Hearts, Aberdeen, stuff like that. But you know, for fans like, and I'm sure Alistair will agree, you know, obviously St Johnstone and all, I've been in sort of the relegation zone sort of last season and stuff, but I feel like we still get some sort of fun in the league, you know, especially when, you know, the likes of us at one are playing for top six every season and getting Europe, and obviously, you know, like last season, early in the season, playing in Europe for the first time in 37 years, it's a massive achievement, but, you know, we do want to win trophies eventually, and obviously I know St Johnstone done it a few years ago, but I just love to have a league where we can all compete for the league. Like it just feels very, very flat. And I know it sounds silly saying that because obviously every team will be thinking they can compete for the league, but I just love some sort of, you know, trophy. It's never going to happen, but I love a trophy without Rangers and Celtic because the field would be so much more open and every team would actually have a fairly decent chance of being able to go and win a trophy. So it'll never happen, but I'd love to see it.
I'm going to go for a slight tangent here, Alistair, but I think one of the biggest things for me, and I've said this previously, and I think this was something that was posted a few weeks ago as well on Twitter, is the lack of minutes for young players. Now, I've said this about my own club, Hearts. We don't produce enough young players. We've got a couple of really good players there, and guys like Finlay Pollock and Macaulay Tate, who at the moment are not seeing any minutes of football. Celtic and Rangers don't really play young players. It's a really big thing, and I don't know if it's because of the pressure on managers to not play them because, you know, going to Celtic Park, for example, the way that Hearts are playing just now, you're not going to chuck a youngster in there because it could melt, basically. But it's not a good thing for Scottish football that there is not enough young Scottish players coming through and getting played, because I think in probably a few clubs there are young players that probably could play, but they're not getting their chance. And that has been something that's happened for a long, long time. I don't think it's a good thing for Scottish football that all teams do is bring in foreign players or bring in Scottish players for a lot of money, but don't play young players. How are they going to get a chance if you don't play them?
I couldn't agree more. And actually, I think this is one of the most important debates that Scottish football needs to have and probably won't, because as you're aware, the SFA had this report they produced, which was published a few weeks ago. Now, the media reported the headlines on it. I can almost guarantee you very few people have read the whole thing. I've not, but I've looked through the whole thing. It's 140 pages, right? It is not too hard if you've got a statistical brain to actually shoot some holes in it. And my concern is that it's been brought up to say, look, you know, we're aware of the problem. We then have Neil Doncaster on the radio saying, look, we can't have reconstruction because, of course, all the sponsorship, they won't want it, etc. Now, I get that. And I understand that in Neil Doncaster's position, he's got to represent his clubs. They're trying to make as much money as possible. A lot of them haven't got the money, etc., etc., etc. But this is a fundamental problem for Scottish football, is that We can all name young players. There's a guy called, believe it or not, Alex Ferguson, who was in St Johnson's books, right? Callum Davidson told me that he was going to be a, quote, a top player, right? He said in training that day, he dominated training. He's come on a few times. I think he came on against Celtic once. You won't have heard of him now. I think he's alone at Queen of the South or somewhere. Part of the onus is on the clubs. Now, I know that just because you're good at 16, 17 doesn't mean you'll make it, but you kind of hope the clubs have got people who can develop these guys. We've got Franjak, who's just been capped under 18 for Poland. He's the youngest ever debutant for St Johnson. We'd like to see him get a chance. You cannot do it in the current structure. And going back to the thing about playing Celtic and Rangers, if you're playing them 4 times a year, you know you're going to be on a hiding to nothing. If you're playing them once at home, you're going there to go all out to win. And I think you'll get a better game, and they'll get a better game from you as a result. The fans will be much more up for it. And again, I come back to the media thing. The media hate this because if you had an 18-team league or even a 16-team league, they'd say, oh, it's really, really boring. Sorry, guys, it's only boring for you.
Mm-hmm.
For us to see young guys come through. I'm old enough to remember seeing Jim Pearson coming through at St Johnson. There's people older than me can remember Alec MacDonald coming through. Neil Duffy, the father of the Neil Duffy that played for Falkirk, said that he was in the Saints team at that time. He was playing in MacDonald's position. He said he could see that MacDonald was going to get his position because he was so good. And the pleasure of seeing these guys come through, I remember seeing McCoy's playing, for goodness sake, seeing these guys come through and make careers, then you have this associated glory that they started at my club or whatever. It's brilliant. And we just don't have it now. And I think this is something which we should shout about, not just this show, but the Scottish Football Supporters Association, etc., etc. We've got stats and things about the composition of Scottish teams going back in the day, the number of homegrown Scots, the number of Scottish players who register with Scottish teams just now is going down and down and down and down because we're going to the lower leagues of England and getting people who are journeymen down there and bringing them up here. It's a serious problem, and the report from the SFA was good. It'll be forgotten. The media will move on to someone else. We actually need to keep shouting about this. It's really, really important.
I mean, Robbie, young players can surprise you. You know, there's a couple, like I say, young players at Hearts that I think I would rather start. It's frustrating when you're watching like the same players week in, week out that are not doing well enough, and you've got youngsters on the bench that you think, actually, they could do better. Put them in. How are you going to know if they're good enough if you don't play them? I don't know if it's the same at St Mirren, if you've got young guys there that you think could get a chance, but surely it's time that clubs actually start thinking, you know what, let's give these players a chance, but it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen, and it is a big problem. And just looking at us, I mean, you know, we had a guy there, Ethan Sutherland, we sent him out on loan a few times, but he's now been picked up by, you know, Wolves over in England. So that's another big problem. You know, these youth players aren't getting a chance, and then, you know, a team from England's just knocking it out there and going, we'll give you this amount of money to take them, and then we never get to see him play. But so, I mean, I always try and look at positives. Like, there's been some good examples of it. You just need to look at Lennon Motherwell, how well he's fitted into them. For us, I mean, we have a guy right now, Fraser Taylor, who came on in the European game away at Bran and got himself an assist. So there's definitely some positives with doing this, you know, bringing these guys on in these games and giving them a shot, because you'll never know how good they are until you do it. But I just wish clubs would start doing it more, because it does work. There is some examples of it working. It's just not done enough.
Do you not think it's because the managers are just too scared because they know that the margin for error is ridiculously small in the Premier League, even at 12 teams, you know, and therefore they just don't want to take the chance because it's them that's going to get the bullet.
I mean, the prime example for me, and I've used this before, is Harry Cochrane. Made his debut at 16 against Celtic, scored in his debut, had a really good game, and now he's playing in the lower league. It didn't quite work out for him. But there are young guys there that I would love to see get a chance. Connor Smith, he's now back on loan at Hamilton, and I really had high hopes for Connor Smith, but he's got punted from club to club to club, and again he's now out on loan again. I don't think that's a good thing. You've got to give these guys a chance and let them actually play football. Now, maybe Hamilton will give him a chance, but I think a guy like Connor Smith, who I really like, he just keeps getting punted from club to club to club, and now he's at Hamilton.
Well, sorry, Robbie.
No, I was just going to say, we have a guy in Ireland right now called Kieran Offord who's scoring every other game. I'm not too sure what his actual record is, but he's scored the most games he's played in this season. One thing we're sitting on right now that we're really struggling in is that final third and that striker department. So, but that's a prime example. If he comes back at the end of the season, I'd love to see him get a shot because, I'm not trying to compare the Irish league and the Scottish league, but bring him in and see what he can do because he might be able to get his goals and do well.
Yeah, the other problem is that if you take someone like Billy Gilmore, for example, now there's a guy coming through at Rangers. I don't know, maybe you guys can correct me. Did he play at all for Rangers first team when he was there?
I don't think it's no.
I don't think so.
He was offered to St Johnstone, right? With a view to him obviously moving down south. We turned it down because there was money involved, which our then chairman didn't want to spend. Now, in retrospect, that wasn't a very clever decision. And you kind of wonder about how many other guys like this, and I refer back to the guy, Alex Ferguson. If Callum's right and he has it in him to be that high quality player, there's somebody who maybe lost the game. Now, that may be because in our circumstances, what we really need are experienced players. The last thing the manager's going to do is take a chance. And that is the crux of the matter. How on earth do you give these guys a chance? Because we'd all like to see him. Mackenzie Kirk, case in point. You've talked about him at Hearts, Graham.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Saints fans were disappointed he didn't start on Saturday. And he's going to have to start soon because all the other strikers keep getting sent off. And when you get sent off as well, we really are in trouble. But when he's come on, he's looked like he's got something about him. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure. And you said he was a good player, Graham. He came on first game, missed a sitter. I thought, aye, that'll be right. He's actually been really good since then, and I'd like to see him. Well, he'll have to get a chance. But it shouldn't be through necessity. It should be because actually this guy's good enough. Go back to McCoist. Sorry, I'm name dropping again. John Brogan said to me that he was asked by the manager at the time, it was Alec Rennie, what about McCoist? And Brogan said to him, look, he's good enough. Put him in, take a chance. And rest's history.
I still remember the famous story about John Robertson at Hearts. He was offered to Hibs, and at the time, the chairman, the manager, Tom Hart, said if you don't sign the contract now, you'll never play for Hibs, because Robertson wanted to actually go back and speak to his brother Chris about it, because there was no agents in that time. But he wanted to talk to his brother, and the manager has said, look, if you don't sign the contract now, you'll never play for Hibs. And Robertson didn't sign the contract, ended up playing for Hearts, and look what he did. I always wonder if that must be the biggest regret in Tom Hart's life, that they didn't sign John Robertson. And I'm glad they didn't, because he's my hero. But thank you, Hibs, for that, because they mucked it up again. The chance of Hibs bottling it again. Who knew? But anyway, let's go back to United against Rangers, because we'll have to move on at some point. I just go off on rants occasionally. But in terms of United, Robbie, still sitting fourth in the league. Apart from today, it's been a decent run. I think Jim Goodwin's got to be happy with that.
I think he'll be very happy. He's also in a cup quarter final as well, so he's got that to look forward to on Friday, and that'll be a big game for him. But Goodwin's got to be delighted, because I was listening to it with him and Gordon Duncan previewing this weekend's game, and he was very open about how well the start's been. He's very clear on his objective. Get survival in the league first of all. That's the very first objective. They look well on the road to doing that. I could see them pushing further, to be honest. But he said, there is always an expectation within the club that they can go and do more things, and I think they can. They've got a very, very capable team there that can go on and do well in the league. So Goodwin's got to be very, very delighted.
Let's move on to the games from yesterday, and let's talk first about the game that had a lot of contentious decisions in it. And no, I'm not going to go to Celtic Park first. I'll leave that till later. Let's go to Paisley. St Mirren 2, Kilmarnock 2. We could actually spend about an hour talking about this game, to be honest. So St Mirren took the lead on 7 minutes through Olasanya. Kilmarnock levelled on 11 minutes through Ollie Watkins, through Marley Watkins. St Mirren went 2-1 up on the stroke of half-time through Marco had a penalty. Joe Wright was then sent off just on half-time for I don't know what he was doing, striking out Sean Rooney. But there was an equaliser from Kilmarnock in the second half, an own goal from Jonah Ayunga. I mean, I have to start with you, Robbie. That was an absolutely mental game. And that was just watching the highlights on Sports Scene. That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know obviously when you watch a game on Sports Scene, it'll show you all the best moments. You watching that game, it wasn't great. It wasn't great at all. I know it was 4 goals, a lot of VAR decisions, but it was a really, really tough watch at points. And I think in the first half, just looking at the pure football, I thought we were excellent in the first half. 11 versus 11, we looked comfortable. We picked a moment to go forward. Obviously, a good ball in from Jayden Brown, good Olasanya header, which Olasanya's been no doubt our best attacking player this season. Unfortunately, Robinson said he picked up an injury, and I believe he limped out of the stadium after the game. So hopefully that's not too long for Olasanya because he is such a key player for us. But I mean, looking at the Kilmarnock first goal, one thing I've always said is I don't understand what we're doing from set pieces because I get it, there's no marking stuff, it can work, but we just left 3 Kilmarnock players on the edge of the box, and we actually done it for about 3 more corners that game. We're just letting them on the edge of the box, and that's how it worked. So the ball's just played out of the edge, Armstrong runs onto it, and I know it was a VAR check, but I think from what I've seen, it was a clear goal. So I love to see us working set pieces. Then Marco Harris penalty, in my opinion, that was a penalty as well. I don't think there's any doubt about that in my mind. But again, it was just such a boring game. Although the VAR decisions did help it, and just to go into the VAR decisions, I think the referee get 2 hours wrong. I think Mandron was lucky not to be off the park. I think it was right Robinson substituted him so early, although it did look a bit annoyed, and rightly so. I mean, only playing 17 minutes, but the manager had every right to take him off. Sean Rooney's kit, and I actually wanted to ask you guys because I'm not too sure on the rule of the game, but am I right in saying VAR can't intervene on something like that unless the yellow card is given or the red card is given on that type of decision? I'm not too sure on that because obviously Rooney kicks him, but I don't know if VAR can intervene and actually give a red for that.
I think if there's, I think they can go back and look at it if they think that it warrants a red card. But I think if the yellow card is given, then I think, again, I need to check it. This is part of the problem we talked about before, is that we don't actually know all the rules because it's so complicated. But my understanding is, they can say, go and look at that again. Because it could be an off-the-ball kick, for example, and then they can go back and look at it. This wasn't an off-the-ball kick. It was a pretty on-the-ball kick. And I know it's in the comments. We've got Killer Gamer saying Joe Wright shouldn't be off. What about Sean Rooney should be banned for life? First thing I'll say, if Sean Rooney was banned for life, it would make Scottish football a lot less entertaining because he is very entertaining. But he was bang out of order and he should have been sent off. I mean, I can sort of understand he thinks he's trying to get the ball because the foul was given against the Vassell Kelly player for having the ball where it was between his legs. And Rooney could say he was just trying to get it out. Well, he was trying to get out through the boy's thigh as far as I can see. And then the second one was just an absolute assault. So he should have been off. No doubt about it. And Mandron should have been off as well. Again, if it was our team, our player, most fans have looked at that. I'm interested in your view, Robbie, and the other St Mirren fans you sit alongside. Look at that thing. We want to watch there. He should have been off the park.
Yeah, 100%. Mandron should have been off the park. That's to commit a foul like that so quick after picking up a yellow is ridiculous, and it should have been red. On the Rooney thing, you can make the argument the first kick, he's trying to win the ball. In my opinion, both kicks are very, very harsh. There's no need for it. Either the kicks, to be honest with you, I don't even think he was trying to play the ball, to be honest with you. That's just very Sean Rooney. And the second kick, as you said, it is assault. But I'm interested to hear Kelly Games here because, in my opinion, Joe Wright's a definite red card. He's gave Sean Rooney a low blow for the WRB. I mean, that is ridiculous what he done. So, you put your bias aside for a minute, but say Sean Rooney's is a red card, but Joe Wright's is a red card as well, in my opinion, anyway.
When your own manager is coming out and saying he's fighting on 2 weeks' wages, that tells you need to know. Even Derek McInnes knows that's a sending off.
Yeah, it was. It was. There's no argument. You cannot. Let's not beat about the bush. He basically hit him in the crown jewels, So unsurprisingly, Rooney went down like this, and he would do. And I take the point that Kelly Gamer's making about Rooney as a bam but a durator. That's quite a good assessment. He's actually, see if you speak to him, he's actually quite a quiet guy. It's quite difficult to get anything out of him. I suspect he's totally different on the football pitch, but if you're speaking to him externally, he's not quite the same. And as I said, he does provide entertainment in the game, but he was out of order. And it's interesting your comments, Robbie, about the game actually not being that good because obviously they edit it to make it look good. I'm afraid to say I thought that was a brilliant own goal. Sorry, mate. It was just, you know, I was if the Killie player had scored it, they'd been chuffed to bits. I mean, he couldn't have deflected it better if he tried, you know.
We are better at scoring corners when we're trying to defend them than we are actually scoring corners in attack. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like our corner system. It just doesn't seem to work. And when we're defending it, it's very easily picked apart as well. But no doubt it was a bullet header for you can get. I mean, he couldn't have got it much better. So, aye. But I just thought in the actual game, I mean, I feel like in the second half, Kelly deserved probably. I think a draw was a fair point overall, but if you look at the way that second half went, you'd think we were the one playing with 10 men. You know, we just looked so. I don't know what it was. It felt like at times we were trying to play for the 2-1 when we need to go and try and get the third goal. We are not good at hanging on to 1-goal leads. We never have been. We probably never will be. We always seem to concede late, but I feel like with the way the second half went, Kelly should have won the game. Probably that's probably fair. I just think that we've got no urgency right now. We're very slow on the ball, very slow to move the ball, and not creating enough with the. You know, we have some great attacking players. I know we've had a lot of injury problems, but our attack is really great, and we just don't seem to use it enough. Where on the other hand, Armstrong and Kelly's number 10, I forgot his name, absolutely tore us that whole game. They were just constantly running at our wing backs. Then the Kelly two centre backs seemed to be making overlapping runs, which I found a bit strange at times. But it worked every time. It was just down the wing, overlap, play it, and into the box, and we couldn't handle it. I mean, I know we get that third goal late on, but again, in my right opinion, I think it should have been chopped off. I don't know what Fraser's trying to do. I think he's trying to take his head off, but I think it rightly should have been chopped off. And I mean, Alistair, you said it earlier, that's one of the moments that absolutely ruins the game. You know, I'm up celebrating, I'm 2 stands down from where I should be celebrating the winner, and then it gets chopped off 2 minutes later. So that is one of the moments where you just wish I wasn't in the game. But look, I think overall a draw was a fair result.
I tell you what I do think that's interesting about it is that both teams are actually, well, not so much St Mirren, but Kilmarnock are in a false position in the league. I mean, at the start of the season on this show, I think I said Hearts will be no problem with third, and Kilmarnock will be top 6 easily. And obviously that's not how the table looks just now. But you can see if Kilmarnock can keep all 11 players on the park, they're going to climb the table. St Mirren are a good team as well. I mean, both those teams are going to be fighting around the mid-table. It's actually going to be quite congested, I think, there. And then the draw, I'm afraid, is going to sink to the bottom, sadly. Unless Hearts can do us a favour by carrying on where they are.
Well, that's highly likely where we're going so far, to be honest. But just in terms of Kilmarnock, Alistair, I mean, it is now 4 red cards in 5 games, and Joe Wright's been sent off twice. Is discipline going to be a major thing for Kilmarnock? And is Derek McInnes going to have to do something about that? Because you can't keep getting sent off every week.
Well, Dell is a very experienced manager, and also has played at a much higher level than virtually everybody that's under him just now. And I don't think there'll be any problem at all with him sorting that out. Wright was obviously sent off against us. I think it was Wright who was sent off against us for 2 fouls, and a bit like Mandron, there were stupid ones to do. I mean, you can go through a spell of being unlucky. Or you can also go through a spell of players basically either losing it or whatever. But that comes from the top. And I'm sure we're going to talk about my team later on, but I would question the control that's coming from the manager because players are being sent off and not keeping the head. Now, I think Dell's got enough experience and is a tough enough cookie, he'll sort that out. He's just a very, very good manager as well as being a really nice guy as well to boot. That's why I think Kilmarnock will climb the table comfortably over the next month or so. But the discipline thing, I'll be surprised if Kilmarnock carry on the way they're going. And on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a few more players sent off. So, Robbie,
Alistair used a word there, control. Is that frustrating for you as a St Mirren fan yesterday that you didn't actually control that game when you were up an extra man? Because at 2-1 up, you've got that game under control. So was that a big thing yesterday? You just couldn't control that game well enough?
100%. I think Robinson said after the game, I felt like, people thought it was game over at 2-1 when they were down to 10 men, but it's not. There's still another half of football to play, and we made the substitution at half time. James Scott, who, by the way, I thought was exceptional during the game, his pressing on the defenders was absolutely amazing. It just non-stop for the full 45, so credit needs to go to him. But we just, we're keeping the ball well. One thing is that, Robinson loves to play counter-attacking football. He doesn't like to sit with the ball. He likes to try and counter-attack, and it's something that works in a lot of the games. When it doesn't work is when the other team are down to 10 men and we need to try and keep a hold of the ball, and that's a problem because we are not good enough on the ball at times. We're very, very slow. We're not getting up the pitch quick enough. We keep going backwards. I think Boyd Muntz, for how much I love him in the midfield, I think he's a very, very good creative player. Yesterday, every time he got the ball in the middle of the park, he was either passing it just straight across to Mark O'Hara or going backwards to Gogic, which was just completely slowing the game down when we had to get it up. But I think Robinson will be annoyed we didn't control the game enough. Kevin Van Veen as well coming on to get some minutes. Good to see him. He didn't really have too much to do, but it looked like, it looked fitter than I think most Kelly fans would have seen him when he went there alone. He actually looks quite match fit, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. But I'm relatively happy with the way the game went. I think if the 2 red cards were given, the game would have worked it differently, but I think both teams can be happy with a point, and I actually thought Kelly could have went and snuck the game at the end.
Good afternoon to Consolcast. Come and get a happy birthday from Michael Haw, please. I think that's our Mikey that's on the show. I think it was his birthday yesterday, so happy birthday to you yesterday, Mikey. Hope you had a good day, my man. Apart from the fact Hibs won, unfortunately. But in terms of Kilmarnock, Alistair, a point away from home when you're down to 10 men, it's not a bad result. And I think I said this on Friday to the guys as well. I think the fact that Kilmarnock are not in Europe anymore has to have a big, big bonus for them, because European football, as I know, it's a massive impact because a lot of teams cannot handle playing Thursday, Sunday. So I think the fact Kilmarnock don't have that now, they probably will climb the league now.
I don't think there's any doubt they will. I mean, and you're right, European football makes a big difference. I mean, fortunately, when Saints were qualifying for Europe, we were out of it before the league started, so that wasn't such an issue. But not quite. But I do know what you mean. Of course, it has an impact on Celtic and Rangers as well, and indeed on the top clubs down south. If they're playing particularly at the top level. Kilmarnock are too good a team to be where they are. They're getting a lot of practice at playing with 10 men. When they played against 10 men with us, the boy was sent off very early, and we absolutely controlled the game and just passed it around them in the first half. And then Dell changed. I think he brought Matty Kennedy on. I don't know why he didn't start with him, because one of the things I love about Kilmarnock is they've got 2 wide players who can take on a man and create things. And again, I go back to this thing about what you want to see as fans. Apart from goals being scored and maybe people making great saves, one of the best things you'll see is a winger taking on a man, beating him and creating a chance. And Kilmarnock are brilliant at that. Really, really good. So I still stand by whatever it was, my prediction at the start of the season. Kilmarnock will finish the top half of the table. I don't think they're going to be right at the top, but they're going to be perfectly safe. And they'll be in that congested mid-zone. They're just too good not to be. They've got a good manager. They've got good players. And, they're going to be absolutely fine.
Rob, in terms of St Mirren, you're sitting 7th. It's not been a bad start to the season. Are you relatively happy with your season so far? I know it's early days yet, but you're happy with it enough?
I'm actually very happy with the season. A lot of supporters have been very, very harsh on Robinson so far this season. You just need to look at the teams we've played. We've played Aberdeen, Celtic. We played Hibs. We beat them. A draw away at Dundee is a good result. Yes, Dundee United losing in the cup probably wasn't what you wanted, but we just come off the back of a European game as well. So I'm very happy with the way the season's went, but there's no doubt next week's a big game. And Graham, you'll know it's a big game. Very different reasons for both clubs. Obviously, Hearts come to Paisley, you need to get that win, but we need to get a win as well because we've not won in a while. And it would be nice to get off the sheet again with a win. So I think next week's a big game for both clubs, but I'm very happy with the start.
Yeah, you touched on Hearts. Let's talk about that now. Let's get it out of the way. Celtic 2, Hearts 0 at Celtic Park. A penalty from the new man, Arnie Engels, after 52 minutes. And then Luke McKeown scoring. Of course, I knew he was going to score against us. That was typical. But it wasn't the hammer I expected. I thought we were going to get absolutely pummeled. And thankfully, we didn't. But again, contentious decisions. Hearts thought we had a penalty in the first half for a handball by Liam Scales. It's been a topic of conversation on our group chat. It wasn't given after a VAR intervention. Colin Stephen didn't give it. I'm going to come to you first, Alistair. Did you think that was a penalty? We just talked about the handball rule earlier. Do you think it was a penalty or right call?
It's really, really hard to say, and this comes back to what we were talking about before, and the the SFA's VAR show. Looking at it in real time, it looked like a penalty. When I say real time, watching the highlights back, looking at it again, time after time on the replays from most angles, it looked like a penalty under the current laws. However, looking in social media and unsurprisingly posts placed by Celtic fans, there's a still shot where it looks like it's hitting him up the shoulder on the t-shirt line. That doesn't tell you anything, and this goes back to one of the problems with VAR before, is that they were looking at stills, which make it look miles worse or miles better or whatever else. So I come back to, well, I'm not answering your question, but I thought it was a penalty at the time. If it had been given and there was no VAR, virtually nobody would have complained. All the fans would have complained, obviously, but they'd have probably sucked it up and gone with it. So it would have made any great difference. It might have really annoyed Celtic. They might have scored a lot more goals. I don't know. But I agree with you. I thought you might well be on it doing. And it nearly was 3. But again, listening to the radio, the impression I got was that actually Hearts were actually coming back into it in the second half a bit. And although they were unlikely to win, a bit like Dundee United against Rangers, they were not out of it until obviously that second goal went in.
Robbie, when that new VAR show does its second instalment, which I think is going to be at the end of the month, I think, do you think Willie Cullen will be saying the referee got that decision wrong, it should have been a penalty?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I've not actually seen the Celtic highlights, so I'm not entirely sure of the full, what actually happened. I have seen the still image. Of course, it was in the group chat. Again, I'm not going to try and judge it off of a still image. I don't think that's very fair. But as we spoke about, I'd love to see it in full. So I'll need to get a watch after the show. But I feel like from what I heard, Hearts had a few decent chances. I think, one of the things you said, Graham, was should Shankland be dropped and one of the next week. I think I heard he had 2 good chances as well. So from what I heard, the game, if Hearts took their chances, it could have gone a different way. But Celtic, again, they're just getting the job done as well.
Celtic did get a penalty, shot corner, after 52 minutes for a handball by James Penrice. Again, I'm sure you've probably seen this, Alistair. Do you think that's the right call?
I think it probably was, actually, again, under the law as it currently is, constituted. It looked to me as if the moment he did it, he knew, a bit like Hanley for Scotland. He knew. You could tell by his body language, by everything. But what I will say is I think as the ball's coming across, are his arms in a natural position? No, I don't think they are. And, in relation to his body movement and the fact that this is an athlete running it, and I think he's trying to get them out the way. And that, to my mind, again, makes a mockery of this whole thing, because this unnatural position, whatever it is, he did not deliberately mean to stop that. So if we were to go back to what we understood it was previously, was it deliberate handball? No, it wasn't. The ball hit him. He's trying to get his arms out of the way. That's the impression I had. And in those circumstances, I'd have said, under the old regime, not a problem, play on. Under the current laws, sorry, it's a penalty.
I mean, Robbie, Hearts were decent yesterday. Obviously, Celtic get the second goal from Luke McKeown. Really good finish. But it is now, I think, at the start of the season, it's the first time Celtic have kept 5 clean sheets start of the season since 1906. Now, I don't think, really, to be honest, Kasper Schmeichel was tested a lot yesterday. But I've said previously, I think Kasper Schmeichel's a cracking goalkeeper. And I think he's a really big upgrade on Joe Hart. I don't think you can really doubt how much having a good goalkeeper is such a massive thing. St Johnson had that with Dimitar Mitov, who's now at Aberdeen. I think Kasper Schmeichel is a fantastic goalkeeper, and he will do very well for Celtic this season.
Schmeichel is the best goalkeeper in the league, without a doubt. He is phenomenal now. He's not getting tested so much at Celtic, and he'll probably be fortunate with that, with how well the defence have done. He just gets to sit there, really, and take the game in sometimes. But he's not been tested much. No doubt when Celtic get into the Champions League and the sort of nitty-gritty points of the season, he'll get tested more, and that's when you'll probably find out a bit more of what he's about still at his age, because there's no doubt in my mind that he's still a fantastic goalkeeper. I don't think Schmeichel's been tested much in any of the games he's played in, to be honest. I feel like, I don't think Schmeichel, I don't think we yet see the best of Schmeichel, but Aye, Celtic are doing very well right now. I just wonder how long they can keep this going for, because I really don't know, bar Champions League, what team's going to be able to break that Celtic team down. I don't even think Rangers will be able to break that Celtic team down when they go to but I think it'll be back at Ibrox by the time the next Old Firm comes. So aye, Celtic are very, very comfortable right now. To be honest, I don't see who can really stop them in the league.
Yeah, Alistair, Celtic got a few decent chances yesterday. Craig Gordon made a couple of really big saves, but it just always feels with Celtic that if they want to go up a level, they can. You know, last season I don't think they were fantastic. This season started off very well, but it just feels that if they really want to step it up, they can.
Yeah, and I think they were really flying before the international break, and it maybe set them back a little bit because they weren't as good as they could be against Hearts. And as you know, as you said, they were going for this. Well, it was quite funny actually because Brendan Rodgers talked about people turning out to see this record. Well, it wasn't a record; it was just equaling a record. That's just me being pedantic, but it wasn't a record. I can see them not conceding goals for quite a few games to come, especially because they're playing us quite soon. And I do think that they were not at their best yesterday. You're right; they were going to win that game, barring a sort of Nottingham Forest Liverpool type of disaster from their point of view. Schmeichel is an extremely good goalkeeper. He did make one good save early on from recollection in the game, and then he had one real sort of one for the cameras where, you know, he took off and held the ball at arm's length, which was, you know, was never going to really trouble him. I think they've got Slovan Bratislava. That'll be a slightly more testing game. I think they're probably going to win that, but again, who knows, because they're so used to playing the Scottish level of the game that the step up might be more difficult than they actually think. If you're playing our teams, with great respect to the three of us that, you know, we follow, that's not the same as playing top level European teams. But that will just make them stronger because they get more experience. They've brought in guys on, you know, more. They're signing people for more than twice the money that St Johnstone turn over in a season. I mean, that gives you an idea of the gap. Almost Hearts turnover. You know, that's the kind of money they're signing players for. So nobody else is going to compete with them, I'm afraid. We've talked about this earlier on the show. I really do think it's not good for Scottish football. Great for Celtic fans, but actually, at the end of the day, would you rather not see really good competitive games? You still want your team to win, but you're not getting it. You're winning at a canter now. I'm sorry. I would love that up to a point, but I really would like to see good games of football. And I don't think you're getting that as a Celtic fan.
Graham, can I ask you two questions quickly? Just quickly, I mean, I want to get your thoughts on the VAR decisions from yesterday, but I also want to get your thoughts on Hearts as well and how, you know, can Naismith turn this around really, because it has been a really, really bad start of the season. So just as a Hearts fan, I mean, how are you feeling?
I think the first point about the penalties, I think the first one, I watched that about 10 or 15 times and I still can't decide if it's a penalty or not. I think it does hit his hand, but I don't think it's an unnatural position. And I think the one on Penrice, I think it is a penalty. You know, he does look guilty, but Penrice has actually been very good for Hearts. In terms of Hearts this season, I think next week is massive against St Mirren. If we lose that and it goes to 8 straight defeats, I think Naismith's gone. I don't think the board can afford to keep him, but he signed a new contract 6 weeks ago. My worry is that if they sack him, they will then appoint Liam Fox, which is the wrong appointment. I think last season, yes, he turned it around, but this season I don't see any signs of that. I don't see a style of play. And Michael Stewart talked about this yesterday. He doesn't see an identity. Now, I don't like agreeing with Michael Stewart, but he's right. I don't see it either. Yesterday was better than I expected. I thought we actually played quite well yesterday, defended very well. Musa had a chance at the end that I think he probably should do better with. But I think next week is make or break. If we lose that next week, a team like Hearts, or the squad we've got, should not be bottom of the league after 5 games. I'm sorry, we shouldn't be. I heard Naismith after the game yesterday saying that he doesn't look at the league table. Well, I'm sorry, but we are, and we're bottom of the league. It's not good enough. He signed 9 players. He signed creative players in Blair Spilt and Jan Dander. Where were they yesterday? On the bench. I don't understand what he's trying to do. He keeps changing formation. He keeps changing players every week. And the biggest thing for me as well is, after 8 games in League and Cup, he doesn't know his best team yet. Again, another big issue is Lawrence Shankland. He's not scoring goals. He doesn't look anywhere near the level he was last season. I love Lawrence Shankland, but right now, I'd be dropping him next week because he's nowhere near the level he should be. He doesn't look fit. So I think there's a lot of problems at Hearts just now. Yesterday was in isolation. It was fine. I don't think we'll go down. I think we've got the squad that can turn it. But my worry is that if we lose next week, I don't see how he turns it around. I think he will go if we don't turn it around next week.
Robbie,
Please do drop Shankland.
Robbie, I can possibly answer your question because I was a guest at the Hearts shareholders monthly dinner on Thursday, and the guest was the manager who was facing a Q&A from the fans who were basically, to a man and the occasional woman, Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets, and he actually, to be fair to Naismith, what he talked about was very sensibly, because he was obviously asked, about the 9 players and all that kind of stuff. And somebody said, well, why don't you just sign 4 very good ones? And he said, that's fine. But the problem is, as we all know, you sign 4 players, 2 of them actually don't turn out to be what you thought they were. And all of a sudden, you've spent all your money, you only got 2 players. He also made the point that against Rangers, because the way Rangers play, obviously, Hearts could actually play in a totally different style. Whereas when they're playing against Dundee United, who are sitting back, it's much, much harder. So the boy Taylor, who looked brilliant against Rangers, was all of a sudden faced with 2 ranks of defenders, and it's much harder for him to get past. And I thought those are all very sensible, worthwhile arguments. Didn't alter the fact that the mood in the room in some of the tables that were there, and there was about a couple hundred people there, was decidedly anti the manager, it must be said. And it's all relative, but I mean, there was a feeling generally that this is Hearts, we're bigger than this, we should not be bottom of the table, which I get. They're not going to be bottom of the table. There's no danger of that. But I think Graham is right. I think if you lose your next game, and Naismith said that himself, he said, he's quite comfortable with the fact that if he doesn't succeed, he gets fired, because that's the rules of the game. Whether, though, here's the question for you, Graham. I don't know. Hearts' finances are pretty good generally, but I mean, you talked about them bringing in Liam Fox. I thought he was a Tory health minister. So where would you go? I mean, I can suggest a manager with a big Hearts pedigree if you would like one.
Who's that? Doc Craig Lavina Hope.
Absolutely, yes. I'll drive him there.
I would like to go. We're going to get the same names: Derek McInnes, Stephen Robertson. I would like to do what Aberdeen have done. Think outside the box. Go foreign. Someone that's got nothing to do with Scottish football. I'd like to see us go a bit differently, but I just think next week is massive. We're already 14 points behind Aberdeen, which at this early stage is crazy. But I think there's a number of issues at the club just now. Like I've said before, there's a number of things that just aren't quite right just now. Gerald Taylor, first game of the season, looked like Cafu. Now he looks a shadow of that. Although he was better yesterday, but it's the constant change in formation, the constant change in the players. He's not kept the same team once this season. He needs to get a settled team and play it every week unless there's injuries or suspensions. And he can't use Europe just now because our next game's not for 3 weeks. He's got to stick to a formation and actually play players in the right position. Because I said it last week, I don't know what he's doing with Blair Spittle. A guy that got 13 goals and 10 assists last season, and he's playing as a deep line midfielder. Jan Dander's been on the bench for the last 3 games, who's been our best player to start the season. I don't get some of the things that Naismith's doing. And my worry again is the fact, I think I said this last week as well, we don't have a football person on the board. Anne Budge has already said she doesn't know enough about football, and she's shown that recently. And Andrew McKinley's not a football person. We don't have a football person on the board. And I think that is important that you get that. Now, we've got Graham Jones to come in, who apparently Naismith does know. That might help. But by the time he comes in, Naismith could be gone. Because honestly, next week is make or break. And ironically, our last 2 managers, Daniel Stendhal went after St Mirren, and so did Robin Nielsen. So it could be St Mirren are going to do it again.
Well, I don't
know about you.
Sorry,
I think if Naismith, if you do beat them and Naismith does go, there's only one man who can take over, surely, and that's Michael Stewart.
Oh God, didn't he? he would think he could as well.
I know.
for next week, I know Hearts, they're not exactly playing the best right now, but if Naismith picks that team lineup and you have the likes of your Franklin, Spittle and Dander, I'm worried because we are facing quite a bad injury spot right now where we've just had to confirm Iakoviti's out until at least Christmas. I believe Taylor needs to go for an operation as well. So I get that maybe, your Shankland's not playing up to it, but if you start these guys, we're not at the back line. I'm not comfortable that, we can stop a Shankland because no matter how bad Shankland's playing, you give him one chance, he still can take it. He's just that good a striker. So next week, I know Hearts aren't playing well and I should probably be more confident, but if Hearts pick some of them key creative players in the midfield and stuff, I'm worried that Hearts could overrun our midfield and really cause us some trouble.
Something that I've noticed recently, and a lot of Hearts fans say the same thing, we lack pace in that team. There is not a lot of pace in that team. Kenny Vargas is the only one that's really got any kind of speed about him. The rest of the players are nowhere near quick enough, and that's a big, big issue. We can't get him behind because we've got no pace in there. A positive for me yesterday was Benny was back. I think he's a massive, massive player. He was really missed. We've got Hoff to come back as well. We just recently tied up Cammy Devlin on a new contract, which I do like as well. I think we'll get out of it, but I don't think Naismith will be the one to do it because I think after next week he could definitely be gone. And it does make the fact they signed that contract 6 weeks ago look a bit of a daft idea, to be honest. It was far too early for that.
Who have Hearts got after St Mirren?
We play Ross County at home. Then we've got Dinamo Minsk in Europe. Then we've got Aberdeen away. And then we've got St Mirren at home.
You see, I think if you're playing St Mirren, this is a statistic which somebody brought out in Sports Team last night, which I wasn't aware of. Apparently, the team that scores, if you go a goal behind this season in the Premier League, no team has ever come back to win the game. So if St Mirren go ahead, then you kind of just, not saying that would necessarily happen, but with Hearts in the form they're in, you can just see the heads going down.
I mean, I'd like to even score a goal. We've scored 2 goals all season. I just want to see us score a goal, man. But yeah, if we concede early next week, I worry what could happen. I mean, like I said, yesterday I thought it was going to be about 6 or 7. So I was actually pleasantly surprised at half time it was 0-0. And I thought, can we just blow for full time now? We'll take that. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot of things wrong. And the biggest one for me is Lawrence Shankland. He bailed us out so many times last season, but he started the season really poorly. And I said it already, against Dundee United before the break, he didn't look fit. He looks miles off it. So I think a big question would be, should he be dropped next week? And actually right now, I would probably say yes, because he's not on form.
Do you think his mindset has been sort of a bit affected by not getting a game for Scotland? He's feeling that at all, or?
No, I don't think so, because I think even he knows he doesn't deserve to start. I wasn't surprised he didn't play in the 2 games. He's not been good enough. I think if they keep picking players on form, then Shankland's not in it. But there's just something not quite right about him just now. He doesn't look fit. I don't know if there's been the fact that nobody came in for him in the summer. He thought he was getting a move. But he's going to get on with it. He's the captain just now, and he's not showing leadership qualities. Again, the other thing I talked about on Friday to Michael on that as well is the fact that, and I said to start the season, I don't like the fact that Naismith has said that he's not got a guaranteed number 1. You have to have a guaranteed goalkeeper. Now, Craig Gordon's got the gloves just now, but then does that mean that next week Xander Clark comes back in? He needs to sort that out. And again, actually, see the second goal yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw it, but the second goal yesterday from Luke McCowan, I think Gordon should save that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The way your goalkeeper coach was asked on Thursday night at this shareholders meeting about the keepers, and he said that just now Craig Gordon is the guy in possession. Xander obviously deserved to start the season, and he said, look, he thinks both of them should be in the Scotland squad. I'm not quite convinced of that, but you do have 2 very good goalkeepers. Xander might have got that one yesterday. You're right, Craig Gordon possibly maybe should have got it. But I got the impression listening to them talking on Thursday that Craig Gordon is currently the guy in the incumbent, and he's unlikely to be shifted unless he maybe does a couple of blunders in the next couple of games. And he's unlikely to do that because he's an incredibly good, incredibly experienced goalkeeper, unless he gets injured or something, But you've also got a guy sitting on the bench who I suspect at his age will probably not want to sit on the bench the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think, Robbie, in terms of Celtic, they've got Slovan Bratislava on Wednesday. Slovan are actually top of their league just now. It should be an interesting game, but it's a game that Celtic, especially at Celtic Park, looking to win.
Yeah, 100%. I think Celtic will go into the game looking to win. I mean, obviously, I can't claim to know too much about this team that Celtic are playing, but I'd say at home Celtic should be looking to win this game, and I think that's the big thing. That this will show a lot of how Celtic are and where Celtic are, because yes, they're doing so well in the league, but the biggest criticism that Celtic have got and Rodgers is the team's not been strong enough to take on the Champions League. So this run around in Europe is going to be interesting to see where Celtic's levels are in Europe and not just in the league, because Celtic fans, I know I speak to a few and they all say it's all well and good, they love winning the leagues and stuff, but they want to be they want to be competing in the Champions League and in Europe. So it'll be interesting to see how Celtic go on.
Alistair, just in terms of, we talked about this on Friday as well, the terms of the new Champions League format, Europa League format, Conference League format, are you a fan of it? Do you think it needed changed?
I actually, well, apart from the fact that I didn't understand how on earth they made the draw, because that struck me as Byzantine in its complexity. I think it will give fans an opportunity, obviously, to see a far greater range of teams. So you're getting to see Aston Villa and all that kind of stuff. That's a good thing. And I remember back in my corporate days being invited to Celtic Park to a few of the games against people like Liverpool and Barcelona, and these were fabulous games with, it must be said, a much better Celtic team than the one they've got now. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and I suspect it'll be more entertaining, because if you're in a group of 4, for example, and you're getting beaten home and away, it's dispiriting, and you can see that whether you're in a table of 12 in the Premiership or you're in a group of 4 in the European League. If your team's getting beaten and you're going to end up with 1 or 2 points, it really does get you down. This, at least, I think, will maintain interest because there's a fresh team coming up. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it.
Rob, would you like the format?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much a football manager player, and I've been using this format for a year. I think it's really good. I mean, not just in the game, but in real life as well. For a team, fans dream of that European away day to somewhere that's sort of random, and I feel like with this, it not only gives you that sort of away day, whereas you're not just playing the same teams as a group, but it also gives you a bit of different players and an even better chance to qualify at it as well, because there's more space to qualify, and it really only takes 3 or 4 good results to get you into qualification. So I think I really do like this format. I think it's brilliant.
Let's move on to another team that is flying, and sadly for Alistair, it's not St Johnstone. It is Aberdeen, who beat Motherwell by 2-1 yesterday. A double from Pape Gueye, the first goal, an absolutely fantastic goal. Motherwell getting a goal back in the 88th minute through Moses Ibie. I mean, Alistair, 10 wins in a row for Jimmy Thielen. I don't think any Aberdeen fan could have expected that at the start of the season. What a run it's been.
Absolutely not. And I thought they'd be better, because Aberdeen had been punching way, way below their weight for a long time. And they've made some good signings, not least their goalkeeper. Yeah, I mean, Motherwell are a good team. But Aberdeen deserved to win the game overall. As you say, the first goal was an absolute belter. And Mitov proved his worth with, I mean, there was, I'm trying to remember who it was now. It was, anyway, cut a long story short, header should have gone left or right of him, but it was straight at him. But he also made other saves later on in the game. And he will get them over the line in a few games. I think he's as important as the strikers are. And bear in mind, they didn't have Shinnie starting the game yesterday. So am I surprised? Yes. I expect them to do much better, but not as well as they're doing. So if you're an Aberdeen fan, I lived in Aberdeen for a long time. I was there when they won the Cup Winners' Cup. And I know how good a team that was. And clearly it's one of the best teams in Scottish football history. It's a one-team city. They get big crowds. They sustain it on the back of their dislike, shall we say, of Celtic and Rangers, particularly Rangers. But they're going to be a significant force this year. And as Robbie was saying, currently they're the only team I can see who might give Celtic a decent game. I suspect they probably will still lose, but I think if they carry on winning, it's infectious, and they'll just be on a brilliant run until they play Celtic, and then we'll see how it goes.
That's Graham there.
I think Graham's shell-shocked by the of Aberdeen doing so well. So I think we'll probably carry on until he either unfreezes whatever in his bottle actually takes effect, and we'll see. we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on your point, I mean, Aberdeen fans have got to be delighted with the start. Aberdeen have a very, very good team, and I said it when Warnock was in charge as well, which still, I can't believe that ever happened. It's one of the things you look back on years and like, how did that ever happen in Scottish football? But the way he's feeling, he keeps it at the basics. He's not going to, I feel like with Stephen Naismith, he's very trying to change it up and try to be very tactical, whereas Phelan's just keeping it to the basics, using players like McGrath well, who, again, McGrath's probably been one of the best attacking midfielders so far at the start of the season. Just using players like that very well, and it's working. You can see that they're getting good results from it. So I think Phelan's been a breath of fresh air that Aberdeen fans would have wanted, and it seems to be working. So all credit must go to him. But that guy's got 5 goals in 5 games now. I mean, that's an incredible start for him as well. So the Phelan's got everything going in the right direction, and I think Aberdeen probably are the only team that could give Celtic a game right now. And to be honest, as you said, I think Celtic would probably still win at winners. So Aberdeen were a terrific start.
I'm back. My internet crashed there. I don't know what happened there. Just in terms of Aberdeen there, Alistair, I mean, I've heard a lot of folk saying, I heard this actually on Sportsline yesterday, a few folk have said Aberdeen haven't really played anyone yet, which is a bit harsh because they're still playing the teams that were actually better than them last season, but you can only beat the teams that are put in front of you, and they're doing that.
They did. I mean, when they played us, they should have been about a couple up at half time. And then actually, when we got a goal back, and okay, it was an own goal, but they actually were a bit flustered because they could see it slipping. Now, we weren't good enough to go and actually get an equaliser, but I think they've strengthened since then. When I say strengthen, I mean in terms of their mentality, and much better at closing games out. So, as I think we've all agreed, you're looking at a team which is absolutely brimming with confidence, which is a massive thing for footballers. I noticed that Paul was saying on the chat it was quite a nervy ending to the game yesterday, and I think Liam Gordon had a header which was plucked away by Mitov at the end. But I still think it would have been a surprise if Motherwell had actually won that game. Possibly, given that they're playing well enough, they might have snatched a draw. But again, listening to Willie Miller, who's obviously not biased in the slightest, talking about it, you kind of got the impression that it was a bit like Celtic playing somebody. You expected Aberdeen to get a goal and to win, and that bit like Celtic playing Hearts. That's what happened, and that's why they're in the position in the league they're in.
Yeah, it's funny because actually Paul Donaldson mentions it here, Robbie. Can't believe that Pape Gueye is the top scorer in the league just now. He was out of French player last season after his loan spell in Norway. He's like a completely new player. And you saw that in the first goal. Where he picks that up, and it's a fantastic finish to be a keeper like Mitov from there. It's a brilliant strike.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's off the line starting the league, and it was some goal yesterday, to run that far and then pull off that sort of finish, it's fantastic. So he'll be full of confidence as well. And so will the full Aberdeen team. I can really see them keeping up this run for a while. I mean, I don't really know, I don't know Aberdeen's next sort of couple of fixtures, but I'm sure they'll pick up a couple of wins as well before they play either Celtic or Rangers. So full credit must go to Gueye and the whole Aberdeen team, because when I watched them beat us, they were very, very comfortable, very dominant, and they picked up a few goals as well. So it's been a very good start for Aberdeen.
Their next game is away to Dundee, which, I mean, I was slightly surprised. I'm sure we'll come on to Dundee presently, but Dundee are a good club, they're a good team. They'll give at Dens, they'll give them a decent game, but I would still think the way Aberdeen are playing, they'll win. Yeah,
I mean, Alistair, looking at Motherwell, it's a defeat, but actually, certainly second half, I thought Motherwell looked quite decent. It's been a not too bad start for Stuart Kettlewell's side. They're sitting 5th in the league. I know that Stephen Naismith doesn't look at league tables. Motherwell fans probably are, especially Stephen if he's watching this. But it's not been a bad start for Motherwell. And yesterday, they had chances, just couldn't quite convert them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've not spoken to Stephen other than after the game against St Johnstone, but they've made one or two quite decent signings. I mean, again, you're looking at a club that's changing a lot of players every year. And they are, I still think that they're going to be the bottom 6. I'll be very surprised if they're in the top 6. But they've got enough about them that I think they will be probably okay. and I'm saying that because I'm looking at the only other team that might actually stop us getting relegated is Ross County, and I'm not even sure about that. So, yeah, if I was a Motherwell fan, I'd be very pleasantly happy with the way the season's gone so far, because you look at last season, you think, changing the players, it could be rubbish again. You could actually go on one of these horrendous runs like last season, and come Christmas, you're, not won a game for, was it about 15 games or something? It was something astronomical. At which point you really are starting to look at the manager, and fair play to them, they stuck with Kettlewell, and he turned it around. And dare I say it, maybe there's a lesson for other clubs there. Maybe you should hang on to Naismith even if you do lose your next 2 games.
Oh God, no! I couldn't handle that. Didn't do that. I mean, it's a fair point, but I think in terms of Motherwell, I mean, I don't really know. I'd love to have Stephen back on here actually, but I don't really know what Motherwell's expectation level is, to be honest, Robbie. You go 15 games without a win last season. If that's Hearts or anyone else, the manager's getting sacked. But they did stick with Kettlewell. He nearly got them top 6. Started the season quite well, but where should Motherwell really be if you look at their squad?
I mean, first of all, full credit to Stuart Kettlewell. I think he's a fantastic manager. I'm quite glad Motherwell stuck with him because I think he's good, and I think Motherwell have a very good manager. So all credit must go to him. In terms of the expectation, I mean, like that, the sort of middle of the league pushing into top 6 it's going to be costed this season. I think Alistair said it earlier. There's going to be a lot of teams wanting to fight in there. So I feel like if you're a Motherwell fan, you'd probably be happy if you're in around 8th, 7th, probably in around that area, maybe in at 9th as well. So I feel like if you're Motherwell, as long as you survive relegation, I feel like Motherwell fans can be happy for this season. But of course, Kettlewell will have his own expectations, and I'm sure he's looking at his team and the way they're playing right now and thinking, if we go on a run here, we could really push up this table. So I feel like for this season, and I don't know if you guys agree, but the league feels very open and around the middle. It doesn't feel like, bar maybe an Aberdeen, it doesn't feel like there's a set sort of 4th to 8th. It feels like it could really go anyway. So I'm intrigued to see what the table looks like at the end of the season, because I think it really could go anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul Donaldson says here that Dundee's next couple of games, they've got Spartans in the Cup next week at home. You'd expect them to win. Then they're away to Dundee. Then they've got Hearts. Now, looking at how teams are playing so far, if I'm an Aberdeen fan right now, Alistair, I'm looking at that thinking, actually, we could just extend that run even further.
Yeah, I mean, Dundee, I was surprised at Dundee's result yesterday. I thought Dundee would quite possibly win that. Obviously, they didn't, because they've played really well this season. So, yeah, you're right. They could well. They've got Spartans in the Cup. There's no way it's not another Cup defeat for Aberdeen. It's another Cup shock. It's not, like, dare I say it, a game just a couple 100 yards along from where I live, a season or 2 back. So, if they can get someone out of Dens, and if Hearts lose, I know there's a lot of what's ifs and maybes in this. Hearts going to Aberdeen, would you fancy your chances based on the way you're playing just now? I would be surprised if you did.
Our record at Pittodrie is as bad as Aberdeen's at Tynecastle. It tends to be the home side always wins these games, so I don't think we've got any chance, I'm going to be honest.
So, yeah, I think Aberdeen have been a pleasant surprise for the Aberdeen fans. And while I originally prophesied that Hearts would be 3rd, I now think that Aberdeen actually may even be 2nd. I think they'll be very much closer to Rangers possibly than Hearts were if they carry on the way they're playing. And again, it comes down to a good manager. It's dead simple, this game. You get a good manager of whom there's hardly any, but once you've got one, you hang on to them. And the good managers identify good players and get them to play in a system that works for them. Easy.
That is actually a question I wanted to ask you guys, because obviously at the start of the season, with expectations, it looked like almost, a lot of people are betting on Hearts being that 3rd team pushing up to Rangers. But by the way the season started, do you think that, for Aberdeen, that could be an expectation where they can go to play Rangers, whether it's at Pittodrie or at Ibrox, and try and pick up a result? Because, this could be the season where could Aberdeen potentially overtake Rangers?
Yeah, I think they could. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to when I lived up there, I mean, they were top team in Scotland. And for quite a long time after that, they were, there or thereabouts. And they've obviously had some shocking seasons in that interim. It's decades ago. but they're a big club. They've got, as I said, it's a one team city, so they get decent crowds, over 17,000 there yesterday. I don't know what's happened with the new stadium. That seems to have disappeared off the radar, but that was obviously talked about quite seriously sometime. Maybe Paul can enlighten us on the chat on that. But there's no doubt that Aberdeen are one of the Scottish clubs that you would expect to be there or thereabouts most seasons. One of the good things about Scottish football is occasionally, as you know, they avoided relegation simply because some of the teams that's come up didn't have the right size of stadium. So you've got all those things which make Scottish football more entertaining around about that level. But no, Aberdeen have got the history and all the stuff that goes with that. And I will not be surprised if they actually are jousting Rangers for second right at the end of the season, bearing in mind that I think Aberdeen fans hate Rangers more than Celtic fans do.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. There's no love lost at all between them. And so when they're playing Rangers, they are more up for it than any other game in the country. It's like the old firm as far as they're concerned. And that obviously transmits itself to pitch. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing to have that level of animosity, but it is what it is. And I suspect that if Rangers have one or two more hiccups, then Aberdeen could really do well this season and actually finish second.
I think that whole Aberdeen Rangers thing, is it not down to that Neil Simpson challenge in the Aberdeen Rangers game years and years ago? I think that's what started it all off, if I'm right.
I was at that game because I said I lived in Aberdeen for a long time, and I used to go along and watch games from time to time. And I was there with, not having a dog in the fight. And at the time, you didn't realise quite how bad it was. No, it goes way before that. Way before that. It's the Aberdeen. I can't use the expression that somebody used because we're on a family show, but the dislike that Aberdeen fans have for Rangers predates that by donkeys. Not sure why.
I think I might start supporting the women's team because Hearts are beating Aberdeen 3-0 in the women's game. So there is a positive today, thankfully. At least one Hearts team can actually score goals and win games. But let's move on to another team that at the moment can't score goals either. It is St Johnstone. Sorry, Alistair. Hibs 2, St Johnstone 0. Damn. So Hibs were 2-0 up. A goal from Kuchereski in the 45 minutes and Martin Boyle 72 minutes. Kim Puoka was sent off very late on for a lunge on Obita. Again, only watched the highlights. Hibs probably deserved to win, but actually, Alistair, I don't think St Johnstone were actually that bad from the highlights I saw.
I go back to Robbie's point about highlights can be misleading. As regards teams that can't score goals, I would point out we've scored twice as many as Hearts, but that's not saying much because we've conceded an awful lot as well. Do you know what? There's a malaise about the place, I think. Obviously, when you lose, and going on social media can be, stepping off the edge of the key into a cesspit. And if you look underneath the official Saints social media channels just now, almost every post is get Levine out. Plus a lot of other words I cannot use on this family show. And I actually think, you know what? We weren't that good. We talked about Dundee United looking good, but actually, if you looked at their expected goals thing, which again, I don't put too much store in these things, but it was rubbish because they had no shots on goal. I think we had one shot on goal, but it was never going to go in, we had a couple of other shots. Second half, Hibs were the better team. A friend of mine who's a big Hibby, he was saying he likes Kim Puoka, but can't do that. And when you saw it back, you can't do it. When you saw it. When you see it real time, it's slightly different because you think trying to block it or whatever else. They said in the radio it was frustration. I just think it was just a stupid decision. I don't think it was particularly frustration. There's no creativity. We've obviously, I think Sinclair's potentially not a bad goalkeeper, but Levine's known for ages that we need a goalkeeper and experienced one and not got one. We haven't got a goalkeeping coach. We haven't had a goalkeeping coach all season. Who is responsible for that? I kind of keep resting my case. We've got one really creative, talented player. His name's Graham Carey. He's 35, doesn't get a start. Most fans say if you are waiting for a substitute to come on, you can put the kettle on, take the dog for a walk, come back, have a cup of tea, and the substitutes are still warming up. So that's the end of my rant. Hibs deserve to win. Let's move on to the next game, please. Which I know you won't let me.
Yeah, Robbie, for Hibs, it's a big win. It's their first win of the season, and I think David Green needed that.
Yeah, 100%. Gray would have been under some amount of pressure if we couldn't find 3 points in this game. But there was actually a player I wanted to ask Alistair about, because obviously it's very easy to look at your phone and go on a football app and look at ratings that the app gives a player. But, but obviously that doesn't determine how a game goes. But one of the apps I use said that I got a Welsh midfielder called Smith had a quite good game yesterday. It always gives me a wee fact about the game that said that he had an okay game. I mean, how was he for St John's?
Matty Smith came, I think Maka signed him from memory, and he started off really well. He looked like he was a player. He'd been in the Welsh squad and he'd played a few times. So obviously, he hasn't been selected for some time. He was at MK Dons, but he looked a not bad player. And then he was basically weighed down by the general malaise surrounding him in the team and didn't play particularly well. Plus, he had Cammy McPherson alongside midfield, which didn't help either. Apologies if Cammy McPherson's watching this, which I think is unlikely. But he started this season quite well. He has got a bit about him, but he scored 1 goal. And therein part of our problem. It's recognised we've got strikers, albeit they're all suspended now, but we've got no midfielders that are scoring goals. Cammy McPherson scored 1 goal in about 3 seasons with Saints. Matt Smith scored 1 goal. Carey scored quite a few because, you know what, he's a good player. None of the Max Kucheravi, the Ukrainian boy who Levine doesn't want to keep, I don't think he's scored any goals. There's a serious problem. If you've not got goals from midfield, if you look at St Mirren and O'Hara and people like that, they're going to score a number of goals which will win them games. We're just not doing that, And it's as simple as that. Interestingly, if I can, I see Paul Dawson's asking me about the statement about the ticket allocations from the Old Firm. Do you want there's a little bit of sort of not fake news about this. To some extent, we're going back to what the situation was before. Back in Jeff's day, Jeff basically said, we need to make as much money as possible. We'll give Rangers and Celtic any part of the ground they want. We'll take the East Stand across the West Stand and sell it and make lots of money. What the new chairman or the new owner has done is actually just gone back to what we had before. So it's not really as big a deal as people are making out. But of course, everyone's latched onto it. You're cutting back the Old Firm allocation. The problem is we're not filling out the Old Firm games anyway. The new owner has made it very, very clear that he wants to get an extra 1,000 bums on seats. Now, putting on one side the fact we're not going to do that unless we start winning games, he's actually making an appeal for Saints fans to turn out and go to the East Stand, which is where most of our season ticket holders are. The West Stand, where I sit, the Rangers will have the end of it, then they'll have both ends behind the goal. That's quite normal. That's no different from what it's been, but it's got blown out of all proportion by social media. So it's actually, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Sorry, Robert, on you go.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, we cut the allocations as well, and there was a lot going around a couple of weeks ago on social media, Celtic fans and Rangers fans trying to say they shouldn't have done it, but there's statistics there that prove that this worked really, really well for us, cutting the Old Firm allocation, because our tendencies have actually went up against Celtic and Rangers since we cut the allocation. So, I mean, it does work. It has proven well for us anyway, at least. It does work, and we are getting more attendance. So it's only a good thing that teams are cutting the allocation for the Old Firm, in my opinion, because every team should only have one stand really to have fans, and I think that's the way it should be. So I think every team has every right to cut the allocation.
Yeah, we've done it. Hibs have done it as well for it, and I agree with it because it means it gets more Hearts fans in the ground and it gets more Hibs fans in the ground. So I completely agree with it. But the issue is, if you look at somebody like, say for example, Livingston, for example, right? If you're an outsider looking in, and or maybe even St Johnstone, just because Alistair's here, if you're looking at a game where, say, St Johnstone Rangers, and you're a neutral, and you're seeing basically most of the ground filled with away fans, I don't think that's a particularly great look, in my opinion. But I don't know about you, Alistair, but that's just my thoughts on that.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not. And there's the need to make money, which I get, because our club is going to lose quite a lot of money again this year. So clearly it's important we actually maximise our earnings. There's also the other thing, which I'm quite glad the club didn't bring up, but there's the incident with Bev Mayer and the Rangers fans in the game earlier on this season at Hampden, in the Cup. A lot of Saints fans put a petition together to the owner to say, ban Rangers fans for the next game. And in my view, what the club could have done if they were sensible is say, look, we are going to ban the Rangers fans because of what happened, but we're going to cut the prices and we're going to make sure that St Johnstone fans turn out and support our SLO who was assaulted by the guys from the Rangers Ultras, and actually make a point. And if they did it as a one-off, I think a lot of other clubs, some Rangers fans would have been really angry, I'm sure, because they wouldn't get to see the game, but a lot of them could have gone, you know what, fair point, major point. You've filled the ground to a large extent to support the lady who was attacked. Let's just move on. I'd love to have seen them done that, but they obviously haven't, you know.
Robbie, looking at Hibs, I think one of the biggest plus points for Hibs yesterday, Martin Boyle looks like he's back on form. He showed blistering pace for that second goal. I think for Hibs, it's a good thing that he's looking like he's in form, because there's no doubt he's a massive player for Hibs.
100%. I mean, that goal yesterday was fantastic, and Alistair, I actually want to ask you that as well, because I noticed I think it was the number 4, the St Johnstone defender, and it actually looked like, I know Boyle probably would have got away from him, but the guy just stopped. I mean, I get it, you're a bit annoyed, the guy's just got away from you, you're a bit frustrated, but I have a feeling they had a slight chance, probably not, they had a slight chance to maybe try and get in front of Boyle for that goal. Nonetheless, it was a great goal for Boyle. And I thought deserved the win. A big win for David Gray, and that really kickstart Hibs season now, because it's not been a great start. I know they've had a couple of run-ins for Celtic, obviously they played us as well, so it has been tough, but that'll really, really help them.
Yeah, listen, it was a great finish. There's no getting away from it. Should Cameron have actually caught up with him? Very hard to say. Slightly strange that your captain's a player who's on loan from another club. That's a reasonable criticism. We lost another goal from a set piece just before half time, which we've been losing goals for fun from set pieces over the last few games. The manager comes on and says, they tell the players not to do this, but they don't do it. There's an expression here with Jensen Sherlock, but I won't use it. You're looking at it and thinking, yeah, Hibs were the better team. They deserve to win. My Hibby supporting friends say Hibs are slowly getting better. But they should. They're like Hearts. They've got big crowds, decent amount of money, much better squad than other teams. We've talked about this before on the show. If the teams ended up ranked by their budgets, then Hibs would be in the top half of the table, and they've punched way below their weight. So, yeah, Boyle's a good player. I don't think that Hibs are going to. They're going to be fine, but I don't think they're going to be brilliant this season. I just don't feel that. I feel there's better teams. I think St Mirren are a better team on their day. I think Kilmarnock on their day are a better team. If Hearts can get their act together, they're probably a better team. So Hibs are going to end up mid-table at best.
Alistair, I don't know who your next game is, but I think you've obviously got Kimpioka suspended now. I think Sidibe's still out. You touched on it earlier. Does that mean now that surely Mackenzie Kirk has to get a chance?
I think I've got a chance, basically. I mean, the way things I'm tall enough, I could probably defend it set pieces. Our next game is away to Ross County. Now, Ross County, obviously we're going to talk about them in a minute or two, had a good win yesterday. Most people think Ross County are going to vie with St Johnstone to be the strongest team in the league at the end of the season, holding everybody else up. You talked about your manager and what happens if he loses his next game. I do wonder if we lose away to Ross County, bearing in mind our next two games are Celtic at Perth and Rangers in Glasgow, do you think our manager's still going to be in place?
Probably. It's Craig Levine. He's Teflon, that boy.
I mean, Alistair, who would you like to get in then? If Levine theoretically did go quite soon.
Well, do you know what? It's interesting. I was actually talking to a local journalist about this, and a lot of Saints fans before Levine came in quite fancied Rhys McCabe from Airdrie. And he said, and I agree with him, the guy I was talking to at the Courier, the problem is that what you really want is an experienced guy. This is not a time to be taking chances with somebody who is going to try and play experimental good football. You've got to stay in the table, in the league. So I've noticed on social media some people saying, "Oh, Tommy Wright's the obvious person to come back." I'm not sure I think Tommy's bright enough to realise it's very hard to go back. and also it's a poison chalice. Now, okay, he would be welcomed with open arms because he's the best manager we've ever had. But I really don't know who I'd want. I really don't know. I mean, ideally, it'd be someone like your manager, but we're not going to get him. You know, that's the kind of person you're looking for. We might end up with Naismith.
You could have
Warnock might come out of the road.
Let's move on to the probably surprising result of the day was Ross County against Dundee in Dingwall. A 2-0 win for Ross County. Akel Wright after 6 minutes and a Jordan White penalty after 45. Very surprising that, Robbie, because I think most folk would have had Dundee down to win that given the start of the season they've had.
Yeah, the shocker of the weekend for me, to be honest. I just wonder how much Dundee might miss McCowan in that midfield, because I know Dundee had a lot of possession during the game. I just felt like they couldn't really create anything from it, and that's maybe a worry for Dundee going forward. But like Ross County, we got the 2 goals. In my opinion, it was a penalty. I don't think there's any denying that, in my opinion. But I just wonder, from a Dundee standpoint, how much McCowan could be a big miss for them, because he's a very, very good creative player, and you've seen it during the Celtic game at the weekend what he can do. But Dundee just felt that they missed something in that midfield in that game, so I just wonder how much of a struggle that could be for them during the season.
Yeah, listen, I think McCowan, we all know, is going to be a massive miss. There's been talk, I think it was talked about on Friday as well by Michael on the show, about them maybe looking to try and get back Scott Fraser. He was at Hearts, and I'll be honest, I wasn't that impressed, and he's not an upgrade on McCowan. But, they do need somebody else in there, because McCowan is a huge, huge miss.
Yeah, well, he absolutely is. I mean, you saw the goal he scored at the weekend, and he's obviously going to feature for Celtic because they've got some aging midfielders. So I still think they're a good team. They've got a good manager who's, again, I go back to the point I made earlier on. If you've got a good manager who's got an eye for a player and can actually then get the guys playing in a system, which is what Dundee have done. And sorry to bring this up again, Graham, but the game against Hearts, when they turned you guys over, that was a shock to me. And then I think a lot of other fans, because we didn't see it coming. But on the day, they were excellent. And okay, Hearts were poor. So it was a major surprise yesterday. Does one player make a team? Shouldn't do, but they're going to have to wait before they get somebody anyway. So I'm not sure. They've got, is it Aberdeen next? Yeah, they're home to Aberdeen, yeah. So that's going to be an important game for them. If they lose that, it's easy to lose momentum. But I still think Dundee are too good. The games they've had so far show that. And I will be, again, surprised if they're not one of these teams in the congested middle part of the table at the end of the season.
Yeah, Robbie, I think Tony Dockett's done a great job. Look at the job he did last season. He's doing the same thing again at the moment. They're sitting 6th, not too bad a start to the season. But yesterday will be a massive blow. There was a disallowed goal for Simon Murray against his former club, but it was definitely offside. But Dundee just seemed to lack that bit of spark yesterday, which is, I suppose, not surprising when you lose one of your best players.
Yeah, I mean, look, it will happen in games. Dundee are a team that they're a bit like us. I always look at them like us. Last season was a very, very good season, but they will have games like this where, a shocker will happen, and it's happened to us multiple times. Full credit must go to Ross County, because that is a win that, in the long term, can really, really help their survival, obviously. In my opinion, I think it'll be Ross County or St Johnstone. Sorry, Alistair, that will take the drop this season. So I think, results like this will only help Ross County in the long term, because, they will be fighting for these type of results, and it's good that they got it. But there's no doubt that it's a big blow for Dundee, and I know Tony Dockett will look at that and be frustrated that he didn't get the win, especially with how dominant it looked from Dundee's point of view. But the full credit must go to Ross County for getting the win, but Dundee will be disappointed not to get the win here.
For Ross County, Alistair, it's a case of building on that now. You've got a 2-0 win, first win of the season for Don Cowie. It's a big, big win against a good Dundee side, but they've now got to build on that. And the performance actually was quite good as well yesterday. I thought they played some decent stuff yesterday.
They did, and I mean, to go back to the penalty, if I can, you mentioned that briefly, and I'll go back to building on it. I'm trying to avoid it because they're playing us next, but it was an interesting one, because Tony Dock, incidentally, there's a guy who wouldn't mind his manager at St Johnstone, because obviously he's been there with Dell, but he made the point that the defender won the header, and then he pulls the guy down. He had no need to do it. Absolutely none. And I think Tony Dock was trying to claim that because he'd won the header, therefore the foul didn't really count because the ball was away, which is like, not sure it works like that. Ross County against St Johnstone next week is a very, very big game for both sides. If one of them wins as opposed to a draw, now we've not drawn any games this season. I think Ross County have drawn 2. I would almost, no, we need to win it because we've got the Old Firm the next couple of games. So we really need to win it. If we don't win it, as I said, I think you're looking at the owner's got a decision to make over the manager. He's well aware of the history in relation to the manager because he's been going around Perth and the fans have not been slow in telling them what they think about him. If Ross County win it, then I can see them, pulling away. Hearts are too good to be where they are. We've then got the Old Firm. We could be marooned by Christmas. We could be Livingston again. And at that point, I've seen Saints get relegated too many times in my life. It's not good fun. I'm sure you've seen St Mirren go down. Hearts have obviously gone. It's not good fun watching your team getting tanked every week. So it really is one of the most important games of the season for us and them.
I mean, Robbie, if you look at, for example, Dundee, their next home game, as Paul and that have said there, Dundee Aberdeen, that's a really, really big game. That could be a potential, that'll be a hard game for Aberdeen. They won't fancy going to Dens Park. Dundee have got a very good side there. That could be a really tough game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Aberdeen will be looking at that game, especially after the result of the weekend and going, we need to go here and try and be confident and try and get the win. But Dundee, they'll not have many games where they lose to a Ross County like that. They are a very, very good team. And I feel like in other days they maybe take some of their chances and the result goes different. But this is undoubtedly a big game, probably the game of the weekend, I'd say. I mean, that is an absolute massive game. So I think there's a few big games coming up for, our clubs more specifically. There's some very big games coming up. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
So that was the Premiership this weekend. We've got a few minutes to go. Let's touch on the Championship. Results there were Dunfermline 2, Raith 0 on Friday. Airdrie 0, Falkirk 2, Ayr 1, Partick 1, Livingston 3, Hamilton 0, and Queen's Park 1, Morton 0. Falkirk currently sitting top on 15. Then it's Ayr with 14, Livingston 3rd with 11, Queen's Park 4th on 7. 5th is Partick on 5 points, 6th Hamilton on 5 points, Dunfermline on 4, Airdrie on 4, Morton and Raith propping up the table on 3. Alistair, what a start for Falkirk. Unbeaten last season in the first division. They've come up to the Championship. They're sitting top of the league. What a job John McGlynn's doing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking before about the Premiership being, what a boring league it is with Celtic walking away from it. The Championship's a brilliant league. It's the same in England, to be fair. They're the most exciting leagues in the UK because there's so much competition. And Ayr United looked like they were going to be not walking away with it, but they're obviously going to compete. There's other clubs that are going to come through. I watched the Dunfermline game against Raith on Friday night. Watched Spoonie score a brilliant goal. It's a fabulous league to watch, and it's got no VAR, which makes it even better. so I just, Falkirk, you cannot praise them enough. But again, to my mind, it makes the case for league reorganisation. There's a big club that should be in the top flight. Mm-hmm. Dunfermline arguably as well, Ayr United possibly as well. There's enough big clubs to sustain one good league in Scotland, and we don't do it. And I get the fact that it's a really good competitive league as it is, but these guys could then bring through more young players. I don't know why we don't do it.
Yeah, Robbie, until yesterday, obviously, Ayr dropping points, but again, Ayr started the season very well as well. Scott Brown's doing a fantastic job with them.
Yeah, he's done a brilliant job. I remember before he even further stepped into management, it was like 2 hours at some point, so I wonder how that one would have worked out if that ever happened. But no, Scott Brown's doing a fantastic job right now, and there is a lot of teams in the Championship that could end up, in that fight for promotion. So it's a very, very entertaining league, as Alistair said. No VAR. I love watching leagues when over here. It's such a refreshing sort of football enjoyment, There's never a worry when you're watching it, how is VAR going to step in here or that. So it's always good to watch football like that. But it's a very, very close league, and there's a lot of teams that are doing well so far.
Alistair, just before we finish, I just want to touch on Livingston. They are sitting 3rd, 11 points. Obviously went down last season. David Martindale's got them playing some decent stuff. 3-0 win yesterday. You've got to imagine they were one of the favourites to come up this season, surely.
Yep, they will. I mean, we've obviously got Jason Holt from them, which is a okay-ish buy, though at the time I was slightly underwhelmed by it. Yeah, Martindale is a good manager. He gets more out of an average group of players than most managers can, because they've got all the problems that go with the small crowd, all that kind of stuff, tiny budget, and they punch way above their weight. So as we're saying, it's just going to be really good. And them, Ayr, Falkirk, and there'll be somebody else will come from left field. I mean, not left field, but somebody else will be Dunfermline, or somebody will go on a run. It's just a brilliant league.
So that is our 2 hours up. Thank you, as always, to Robbie and to Alistair for joining me. Thank you for your comments. We are back on Wednesday for Celtic and Slovan Bratislava after the game at 10 o'clock. We're also back next Friday at 5 o'clock. Well, I won't be, because I'm going to see the Castile game, and I cannot wait to see that. So, yeah, we are back on Wednesday. Join us then. Thank you, and have a cracking week, and we will do it all again on Wednesday. Catch us, people.
Cheers.